saphela mandla asoze yaphela mandla asoze yaphela.
Well, good morning, South Africa. My name is Tommy Dixon. We're coming to you live from the Coca Cola Dome here in Johannesburg. It's a special broadcast to reflect on the Democratic Alliance's final rally ahead of next week's elections. It's been a long road for the DA. We are here to analyze, to critique, to discuss the various elements of the DA's campaign leading up to voting day next week. To help me to do that is Professor Susan Boyson, who's going to help me to be able to discuss all these elements of the DA, including the message of the DA during these elections, as well as the future prospects of this party. But before we get into the details of that, we have to take a look at this insert, which traces the DA over the last couple of weeks of the campaign trail.
The DA's election machinery has been in full swing since the launch of its manifesto in Limpopo in February. Campaigning in the Eastern Cape, the executive mayor of Cape Town, Patricia de Lille, expressed shock at the ever-increasing bucket system in the province. She said if the DA took control of the Coca municipality, things would change for the better.
Instead of eradicating the bucket system, it's being on the increase. More than 3,000 people still use the bucket system, but more than 2,000 people don't even have access to sanitation. So that is the bad story of this municipality.
In the Western Cape, with barely 2 weeks to go before the elections, the party launched its final national election poster, featuring its leader Helen Zille, Patricia de Lille, its parliamentary leader Lindiwe Mazibuko, and its Gauteng Premier candidate Mmusi Maimane. Supported by a small crowd, Zille put up the poster.
This poster shows what the DA is. All South Africans moving together forward to build this great country and to take up the vision that Madiba left us under the Constitution for all the people. And we're saying to South Africans, your vote can make history. We can create a democracy where people have work and where people have a chance in life. That is the DA.
A day later, she then urged thousands of supporters in Bellville to keep the Western Cape blue. She said this was the only way that other provinces would be swayed towards their ranks.
Where the DA governs, people can see what good government looks like, and more and more and more they are turning to the DA everywhere in our country.
In the Free State province, Gauteng in Kroonstad was a sea of blue when DA party leaders led a walkabout through the township in a door-to-door campaign. The DA said it was confident that it will become the official opposition in the province after the 7th of May elections.
I'm confident that we will be the official opposition, at least in the Free State, after this election, which will be a big breakthrough for the DA, and I'm very excited about that.
During the festivities of Freedom Day on the 27th of April, the DA spread its campaign in Mpumalanga. Party leaders Lindiwe Mazibuko and Mmusi Maimane told supporters that the DA was making inroads in winning support in the province. The party said once they are voted into power, they will stimulate economic growth and fight corruption.
Mpumalanga has enormous natural resources. It has enormous, coal and other infrastructure and commodities under the ground, which can create a thriving economy in this province.
On the same day, Patricia de Lille appealed to the community of Rodepan in Kimberley in the Northern Cape to vote for the DA. De Lille said the party was only asking for 5 years from the community to bring about change.
After 20 years of freedom that we fought to have this vote, it's only your vote that you can use to bring about change. We're asking you to lend us your vote for 5 years. And after 5 years, if we did not do what we say we were going to do, to vote for a different party.
On the campaign trail in the Northwest province, Helen Zille said the ANC had no good story to tell in the province. She said municipalities in the province had been put under administration and promised voters that people accused of fraud and corruption would be dealt with under a DA-led government.
We stand for clean government. We stand for government that spends money on the things it's supposed to spend on, so that services can improve every day for the majority of the people.
And in Gauteng, the party intensified its electioneering campaign by launching a sequel to its Aisafani advert in Mamelodi, Pretoria. This after the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa upheld a complaint by the South African police that the ad incited violence.
It's an advert that talks about the fact that South Africans, their true taste of freedom doesn't just take place when they have the right to vote, but when they have a job to be empowered. So this advert really puts our next message on the table that says, if this campaign is about anything, it's about which party has the competence to create jobs, and I think we're at the forefront of that.
Mmusi Maimane, SABC News.
Well, welcome back here at the Dome in Johannesburg, where the Democratic Alliance is gearing up to have its final rally ahead of the elections next week. As you can see behind me, members of the DA are really filing in to be able to listen to the messages that will be delivered by the leaders of the Democratic Alliance. We are expecting that the program is going to get underway exactly on top of the hour, where leaders of the DA, including the leader of the party, Helen Zille, is going to deliver the message for the day, really to make that last attempt to make sure that they convince even that remaining undecided voter, to convince them to vote for the party next Wednesday. But now I'm joined here by Professor Susan Boysen, who's going to help us to understand better the campaign for the DA. Professor, how would you sum up this campaign for the Democratic Alliance? It's been a very long campaign over weeks. How would you sum it up, basically?
It has really been, on the one hand, an uphill battle, a tough campaign for the DA, but it's been very energetic. There's amazing new styles of campaigning, multimedia all around, and they even bring in big battles to take issues to court. It's a big battle, and we know they're more or less on the same level of support, judged by the credible polls, as they were in the local elections of 2011, 23-24% around there. And they have to break through, show that they can break through the racial ceiling in South Africa's voting patterns. It is still unsure whether they will manage to do that.
One of the biggest challenges that has faced the DA over the last few years has been about the image of the DA. Many people are saying it struggles to break through to the black voters in particular. Do you think that they've been able to do that during this election campaign?
I think they have made small inroads, but I'm not sure it's been a definitive breakthrough that they had. We know that black African voters and traditional ANC supporters have appreciation for the fact that there are young black faces emerging in strong leadership positions in the DA, but still, it's not a party they trust altogether. South Africans is still too recent, even 20 years post-apartheid. When it comes to election time, they still look for a box to put that hurt, humiliation, lack of human rights of the apartheid era into. And then the DA is the most appropriate box that they can find. But a big thing for the ANC and then the DA to fight against in this election is the 20 years of democracy celebration, and the fact that the ANC is so closely associated with that, and the DA had to fight against that, capturing what is good, not alienating people.
Okay, just hold on thought, Professor Susan Boysen, helping us to understand really what has been at the heart of the DA's campaign. But for now, let's take a look at this insert, which is an interview compiled by my colleague Vuyo Mvogo with the leader of the DA, Helen Zille.
Let me perhaps start by asking you, it was from where I sit, it's not the best position to be in. I mean, to be having all these this confusion, as it were, among and within members of your own party. the bungling over the whole BEE and affirmative action in Parliament, your party seemingly lurching from one confused position to another, but also, your handling of the lists where your own members are actually conceding that these lists are not being representative, and that coming on the back of your handling of the whole Dr. Mampela Rampele saga. It's not the kind of space that you would want to be in.
Run-ups to elections, we always offer opportunities to one's opponents to try and drive wedges. We know that, we're used to that, and it always happens. On the Employment Equity Amendment Bill, I was absolutely right to insist that we took the clear position that we did. I was absolutely right at the time to say this is going to be a very bad piece of legislation. It is going to bring back apartheid, it is going to bring back racial quotas, it will destroy jobs, it won't promote equity, and that's why we must oppose it.
To what extent, though, is this your own personal view, and in fact not the view of perhaps the majority of black members within your party?
Believe me, it is the view of the majority of members of all races in the Democratic Alliance. We don't believe in racial quotas. We do believe in employment equity. We do employment equity in our own party and where we govern. And in fact, 65% of the top management positions in the Western Cape government are previously disadvantaged people.
Now, you didn't cover yourselves in glory in your handling of the Mampela Rampele saga either.
Well, I don't really see how else we could have managed it. We made an offer, it was accepted, and then the person who accepted the offer withdrew. That's as simple as it is. So we carry on.
And now you have the lists that are not representative, only 5 black members of your, in the top lists of both Gauteng and the Western Cape.
We must understand we don't do representativity, we do diversity. And we have a very, very intensive process whereby people have to qualify for our lists through a combination of factors, through a history of work in the party, through a whole series of tests of writing and of public speaking and of political philosophy. So we go through all of that process.
But in a country like ours, with all the history you know very well, there is no way, in my view, that you can actually be able to build a credible opposition that's going to stand up to the ANC if you do not pay particular attention to the race question.
Of course we have to pay attention to the race question. Race matters in South Africa.
But it doesn't seem to matter on your list.
If you look at the
it doesn't seem to matter in the way you're dealing with BEE.
Look, it certainly matters in the way we're dealing with BEE. If you look at the BEE where the DA governs, it is much more effective in getting real empowerment and ensuring delivery than in any ANC-run province. So we are very, very serious about it as well. And we are absolutely determined to ensure real diversity in the DA. We run many programs. Our Young Leaders program is just one of them. We have mentorship programs. We have a range of other programs. And in fact, young black people are surging through our lists.
Well, that was a conversation between my colleague Vuyo Mvogo together with the leader of the DA, Helen Zille, on various aspects of the DA's campaign and what the DA stands for. Now, welcome back here at the Dome, and as we wait for the beginning of the proceedings here, which we expect that they will start exactly on top of the hour, and while the audience here is being entertained with a variety of artists that have been performing here, they are now watching the commercial adverts of the Democratic Alliance, really making that last effort to make sure that its message goes through. I am now joined by the premier candidate of the Democratic Alliance in this province of Gauteng, Mmusi Maimane. Thank you very much, my brother, for joining us here. How would you sum up the campaign? Has it been good?
No, thank you so much. It's good to be here. I think it's been a great campaign. I think
we've put a mark on the ground to say the DA is a party for South Africans. It's a party that has changed. It's a party that is growing, that is strong. There are South Africans from all walks, and I think even here in Gauteng, with a few days to go before the election, nobody can say who's going to win outright. And so that's a testimony of an election. But obviously, it's a bit like studying for an exam. You know, you've got to do it on the day. And so I think we're looking forward to seeing as many South Africans come out on May 7th as possible.
Now, we've observed that the DA has put quite a lot of emphasis on Gauteng. We understand. I mean, it's a hotly contested province. Is the province that has got bigger voters expected on Wednesday. But have you been able to make inroads on other provinces as well, particularly where there's a lot of rural voters?
I mean, I think that's been also in part of the DA's success story. When you go to provinces, I mean, I think in the Northern Cape, we've shown some incredible growth, and anything can happen in the Northern Cape, and I think they've done a really good campaign there, and I think people are frustrated, they're unemployed, and it shows growth. I think if you go to the Eastern Cape, I think you'll see the fact that our teams there, we're holding some of the big rallies in the Eastern Cape, and I think the electorate will show that. You go to Northwest Limpopo, we launched in Limpopo, you can remember that, and even in Limpopo, we packed out a whole section and a whole showground, a whole stadium, to show that in fact we're a growing party. So I think we're the only party that has grown consistently at every election, and we're the only party with a footprint everywhere other than the ANC.
Your critics argue that one of perhaps the weaknesses of your campaign has been that you focused it on one man, and that man is Jacob Zuma, instead of focusing on the whole ANC. I mean, you made some contradictory statements to say that the ANC has done well under Mbeki and Zuma, I mean under Mbeki and Mandela, but the problem is the ANC under Zuma, which many people look at it as meaning that perhaps the ANC is not bad at all. People can still vote for the ANC.
I mean, I think the reflection of this election is not about leadership, it's about the economy. It's about the creation of jobs. And nobody can doubt the fact that in President Nelson Mandela's term of office, there was growth. If you look at President Mbeki's term of office, in the first term of office, there was economic growth. And we acknowledge and accept the fact that you need economic growth in order to be able to create the requisite jobs. If you look at President Zuma's term of office, you can see quite clearly we've been growing at about 1%. He promised 5 million jobs when he came into office and lost 1.5 million jobs. So what is clear is that in fact, not only has he embodied corruption and has put it through the system of the DA and said it's a systematically corrupt organization now, when we talk about 36 billion rands being wasted, it is a clear indicator of the fact that things have changed. And that's why we made the statement, ANC Safari. Now, we've made a very strong offer on jobs. I mean, I think without fail, our campaign has been centered on nothing else but how we talk about real jobs. How do we eliminate the things that inhibit people from being able to acquire jobs?
Many people also argue that, I'd like you to make a comment on this, about the identity of the Democratic Alliance. It's a problem that has persisted over the years with regards to the DA, in terms of it struggling to make a breakthrough towards being able to get black voters. And your critics again argue that the black members or the black people that we see in your rallies and so on are the rented crowds. They're not necessarily the members of the DA. What would you say on that?
I think it's political parties like the ANC who suddenly used to think they're the sole custodians of a particular race. And they get shocked when they see the fact that South Africans from all walk are saying the DA is their party. I look out here in the crowd today, it's South Africans from all walk. These are not people that, you know, it's an insult to black people to say they can be rented for a purpose of a political party. I think it's an insult. I think we should interrogate that and call it for what it is, an insult to black South Africans. We should accept the fact that we're a diverse party, we're a diverse leadership. And in fact, it even started in 2011. If you reflect, even here in Johannesburg, we got to 35%. That can't be be 35% of just a race. It's a plethora of races and different dynamics here in South Africa. So I'm confident that part of the fear in the ANC is that there's a machinery of South Africans from all walk that are standing up and saying that yeah, is our future and is our hope, and they're coming out in their numbers, and I hope on the 7th of May we'll do exactly the same as we prove the point that we're growing, we're dynamic, and we'll outgrow.
Just lastly, on the question of assisting black people to be able to get a slice of the economy in South Africa, the issue of black economic empowerment has actually found that they wanting in some respects in terms of coming up with a strong position in terms of how do you see the question of black economic empowerment in South Africa? How do you propose that the DA is going to implement that?
I think you can't question the fact that we're the only party that's put a credible alternative about the empowerment of black South Africans. Let me first of all say that it's without fail, we've put it on record to say race is a proxy in South Africa. Black people are generally poor and white people are generally wealthy. That rule is still true. So to empower that isn't by simply organizing quotas at the top of the organization, which is what we oppose. What we're saying is that to transform that is about growing the economy, it's about creating diverse workspaces, it's about preferential procurement that favors black entrepreneurs, small businesses that can grow. And so even this campaign in Gauteng, I've made it about small businesses, and I would believe that the majority of those businesses must be black owned, so that in fact when we talk about the transformation of black South Africans, we talk about people who own A, their own houses through title deeds, B, they own their own land, C, their own businesses, so that when we talk about transformation, it also adds to economic growth that can include more people into the employment space.
Do you think that you're going to benefit from the implosion of COPE here in Gauteng?
Can you say that?
Do you think that the DA is going to benefit from the implosion of COPE here in Gauteng?
We want to maximize all our voters from all walks, whether it's COPE, Agang, whoever. We are the only credible alternative, and I think people see that we're the only one who can take the fight to the ruling party, and I think they'll come on board.
Thank you very much.
Much appreciated.
All right, that's the DA Premier candidate for Gauteng, Mmusi Maimane. All right, for now, let's take another look at this insert involving the leader of the DA, Helen Zille.
The people involved in the poo wars will definitely have a different story to tell, because the buckets are there for all to see. But also, if you go back to Judge Nathan Erasmus' ruling, which alluded to the fact that there was failure to consult and engage, that paints a different story.
The Western Cape has got the fewest bucket toilets of any province. And in Cape Town, there are only bucket toilets in those places where people have actively refused the alternatives that were offered to them. And they've refused the alternatives because they believe that if they accept something else, they will have been considered served in terms of service delivery and won't get the house that they want.
And that's not an irrational fear.
That's the issue that retains the bucket system. So we're talking now about the bucket system. The poo protesters, and they're very few, there aren't more than 600 remaining. And every one of the buckets in Cape Town have been offered a replacement.
But then if you consider another fact, at least 236 people have died over the past year in the ganglands. Again, Mitchell's Plain and Athlone are the worst affected areas. So there again, people who live in those areas are going to, or are arguing, in fact, that their lives are not as important as white lives.
The evil he do when he got a little bigger. Good off the final blaze while puffing on a Newport.
Gangs have a very long history in the Western Cape, going back centuries in particular communities. So it's a major challenge. But the one area where the Western Cape has not performed as well as I would have liked is the one area we don't control, and that is policing. Policing is a national competence. The Western Cape government cannot issue any instructions to the police, and we don't manage the police, and they don't answer to us. The only power that we have is oversight. And we have done whatever we can to ensure oversight. When it was quite clear to me that the police were not managing to contain the gang warfare, I asked President Zuma to do what he's been prepared to do in the past when the ANC ran this province, and send in the army to stabilize the situation so the police could get on with what they're supposed to be doing, which is investigating, arresting people, and producing evidence before a court of law.
All right, and they're getting ready now here. They're getting ready now here at the Dome to welcome the leaders of the Democratic Alliance. I want to just take a look on the stage there. They seem set on the stage, and the members also have been asked to take their seats to ensure that the program begins exactly at 11 a.m. this morning. We are not very far now from that as we watch members of the DA walking in inside the Dome here. But we're going to continue with this discussion with Professor Boysen. I was asking the Premier candidate for Gauteng, for the DA, this approach that they have taken really to make their campaign around President Jacob Zuma instead perhaps of the policies of the ANC. What do you make of that?
They certainly knew that President Zuma is one of the weaknesses of the ANC. But if they really studied their politics, they would also know that voters currently, ANC voters, draw differentiation between the organization and the leadership. It's interesting, even the loyalists of ANC supporters would probably highly agree with DA and other opposition party critiques of the president, even critiques from within the ANC. But even if they agree with those with those DA lines, it does not mean they're going to switch their vote yet to the DA. And that is something which the current DA campaign perhaps still will not fully crack. I think it's the outcomes in Gauteng, for example, like Mr. Maimane said, anybody can win. That's not quite what the polling data indicates thus far. The DA would have grown, but we don't see that evidence of significant breakthrough yet. You know, they're probably that 11% of uncertain, relatively undecided voters, but that could really spread out across all the opposition parties, and the DA could also get a certain share of that, as would the ANC.
Now, when you look at the DA message, particularly here in this hotly contested province of Gauteng, you'd realize that it's probably on jobs in particular, as well as e-tolls. Was that a strategic approach for them?
The DA took a very, very strong approach on jobs, as Mr. Maimane also said. It's in the central campaign slogan, together for jobs, etc., etc. And they came out with proposals, which the DA is contesting, and the DA-ANC has got a big debate on that, as to how credible it is, to what extent the DA had drawn on Reserve Bank documents and models or not, as the ANC's good story statistics is also often contested. So the DA had a strong message, but the evidence that they brought that they can actually create those jobs, should they come to power, has not always been that convincing.
But jobs are not created outside of the climate for investment in the country. It's not just something that you can say you're going to do without taking into account the climate to create those jobs in the country. Do you think that the DA has been able to touch on that? Because it presented itself as if it will just do that irrespective of how the climate in the country is. I mean, in Gauteng, for instance, you look what's happening in the mines. There's turmoil there, and how do you create jobs without taking into account really the investment for climate?
That's the thing. The DA has said they can create all these jobs, whereas it really talks about creating the right climate and giving the inducements to business to create those jobs. But the broader political environment and climate is not so directly considered in their approaches. So they tick the right boxes in this campaign, but those boxes were not always filled correctly or filled at all.
Let's look at the prospects of the DA beyond May 7. Do you think that they've made a case to be able to take governance of this province in particular, of Gauteng?
They've tried their best, but I'm not sure they have convinced all the voters. We've also seen that the economic freedom fighters really ate into the young black African constituency that the DA had really hoped to access in this province. So the EFF is going to come out very strongly in this province, and that's been a concern for the DA, and research shows that. So it is not definitive. The DA would have grown, but whether they could come up from what the polling data says currently around 39-40% to a point where they can constitute a majority with whichever other party? That's really a very, very big question. It would be a massive breakdown in previous ANC support levels in order to get the DA there in an alliance, and so we do not see the evidence of that happening.
That's Professor Susan Boysen helping us with the political analysis of the various messages that came through during this campaign of the Democratic Alliance leading up to elections next week. I think for now, let's get a sense of what's happening on the stage as we wait for the leaders of the Democratic Alliance.